We've had a very busy day with NHL trades, but there's still plenty of NHL players that could be dealt before the deadline tomorrow. So in tonight's video, we're going to go over all the remaining rumors around a lot of the top players that have yet to be dealt. Consider this your trade deadline primer, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're going over all the remaining players and a lot of the top rumors that are still floating around out there for players that have not yet been traded ahead of the NHL trade deadline. Of course, we've had an extremely busy day. If you've been following the channel along, we've seen a lot of significant trades, not only today, but really over the past 5 or 6 days. I believe we're up to, I think it's 14 trades now, 14 or 15 that have taken place. A lot has happened, but there's still some fairly significant names left. Now, we do have a couple quick news items I want to quickly throw in here as well. We actually did have one more trade, but instead of doing a dedicated video on it, I decided just to lump it into this one. But the Minnesota Wild have traded unsigned prospect Jack McBean, who's one of the top players coming out of the NCAA, who's going out to Arizona for a second-round selection. Of course, McBean's made it known that he wasn't going to sign with Minnesota, and obviously was looking for a team to pick up his rights where he could sign and get more of an opportunity. I guess that was better suited for him. He also represented Canada at the Olympics and had himself a real strong finish to his collegiate career. So McBean goes to the Coyotes. They will get an ELC in place for him. Of course, they need more players under contract for next year and beyond, especially cost-controlled ones like this. So it's an easy move. They get all kinds of picks they've been accumulating, so they can afford to waste a pick on a good player, a good prospect, at least when it looks like this with McBean. So we'll see where that goes with him. The Boston Bruins, of course, had acquired Hampus Lindholm from the Anaheim Ducks yesterday. They did complete the contract today for the extension that's going to be in place. They extend him on a max term 8-year deal at an average annual value of $6.5 million. So to me, that is a good contract. It's a pretty fair deal. Clearly, Lindholm was ready and willing to sign once the Bruins made the acquisition. That's pretty much the same contract that Torrey Krug ended up getting in St. Louis, except where he wasn't already with the Blues in free agency. He got 7 years instead, but it's funny how the Bruins would not give that contract to Krug, but they do give it to Lindholm. I mean, if you look, Torrey Krug is probably fair to say like a better offensive defenseman. Lindholm might be a little bit better overall when it comes to like the whole well-rounded game per se, maybe. But Krug certainly puts up more points, which quite often coaches are, and organizations are willing to kind of value at a higher level. So I think they've certainly learned from the fact that Torrey Krug not being there the past couple seasons has been a big impact. They haven't had that mobility back there. The left side's been weaker, and essentially he's going to replace what Krug used to be able to give to them, except I think Krug would have been more logical to stay. But you know what? Things change over time. Salary cap situation changes over time. And obviously the market changes over time as well. So we're not going to fault the Bruins too much on that. I just found it interesting that, Torrey Krug, who was, a top defenseman, left Boston not long ago, and they pretty much brought in his replacement finally after all this time at the same contract. So sometimes you wonder what teams are thinking, but all in all, it should work out here in the end. Now, here's kind of the overview of where things are at. We've seen a lot of trades happen. If you look at the Anaheim Ducks, for example, they've traded Josh Manson, they've traded Hampus Lindholm, they've traded Nick Delorier. Really the main player that's left is Rickard Rakell. So I do fully expect Rakell to likely be traded by tomorrow. I know he's been mentioned in teams like the Rangers, for example. Lots of other teams, even Colorado. Watch the Avalanche. They're going to be a very interesting team tomorrow. The Avalanche, to me, and the Rangers, and maybe St. Louis, are going to probably be the most interesting teams. You might be able to throw Vegas in there, but certainly the Avalanche, like I said, and the Rangers have all kinds of cap space. They've made a smaller deal here already. I think we're going to see something more significant. They're going to really be taking a swing here to make a run. So hard to say what they do, but you're probably going to hear me say that they've been linked to several players. And the reason for that is they're kind of probably undecided, and they're going back and forth with a lot of these teams on what potential deals look like, and it's hard to say what they're going to settle on. But Rickard Rakell out of Anaheim, certainly a player to watch tomorrow. Could be one of the bigger names that's moved, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the bigger teams that are rumored to be making some busy moves here, like the Avs or the Rangers or even Boston, that could be possibly in on him. The Calgary Flames now, here's something I learned this evening as well. Apparently the Flames were very much in on the Mark Giordano sweepstakes, but they bowed out early. And the main reason for that, as much as they were interested in bringing back their former captain, there is a clause in the CBA that's part of the expansion rules that a lot of people didn't realize. And when you have a player that was going off your team to the expansion team, in the case of the Seattle Kraken, you can trade for that player to come back. That's not against the rules, but you can't do it with salary retention. And so the Seattle Kraken could not retain salary and send Gio back to the Flames. They couldn't even involve a third-party broker team and do it that way either. That's against the rules. So the Calgary Flames could not take Mark Giordano's contract on at full value. The only way they could have considered it is if salary could have been retained, which is what happened when he went to the Maple Leafs. So clearly, I think he would have probably been interested in going to Calgary, but certainly he's happy to head home to Toronto. But the Flames are certainly been quite interested in trying to add a strong defenseman to improve their blue line before the playoffs. They were involved in the Hampus Lindholm sweepstakes as well. They've fallen short in a couple areas. I'm not really sure there's a bigger name out there now that they really have their eye on. I think we're likely going to see them add maybe something more like as a depth defenseman. It's probably maybe not necessarily a lesser name, but not a big headliner that you would see like in Lindholm or Giordano that everybody's more aware of. Maybe a Nick Letty in Detroit, but there's a lot of talk that Nick Letty is a talked extension with the Red Wings. It looked like they were talking about a 3-year deal, but it never really came close to getting agreed to. Rumor has it that Nick Letty wants a 4-year contract extension. Now, of course, he doesn't have a lot of protection in his contract, so they can trade him regardless. But either with the team that acquires him or into free agency, that's the rumors that Nick Letty wants a 4-year deal. I'd be a little leery on giving that to somebody in his stage of his career, but I'm sure in free agency, somebody probably will, because we see those types of things happen all the time. So we'll see where it goes. But the Calgary Flames, one of the stronger teams in the league that really hasn't done a lot recently. They did get some of their business done early with the Tyler Toffoli trade. So I'm not sure what more they'll do, but a blue line addition is likely there. Chicago is probably still going to be busy. A lot of talk about Marc-Andre Fleury, a lot of confusion as to what the status is on him. He played tonight in Chicago. He was not held out like a lot of other players that are rumored to be traded have been. So certainly, that kind of threw some people for thinking maybe he's not going anywhere. But if he's informed the Blackhawks that he's waiving all trades and doesn't want to move, then you think that would be news as well, and that we would be talking about that. But that has not been confirmed. So there's been a lot of talk that the Hawks and the Wild have been talking about a Fleury trade. Of course, GM of the Wild, Bill Guerin, knows Fleury well from his time in Pittsburgh. There's obviously talk that they were not completely sold on going into the playoffs with Cam Talbot as a starter. Talbot has played better as of late, so maybe their plans will change. Maybe the price tag out of Chicago will change. But it's been reported that the Blackhawks are insisting on getting a first-round pick out of Marc-Andre Fleury, which Bill Guerin's made it known he's not real crazy about trading a first-round pick. So I don't know if that deal is going to get done unless they can find another way around it. But the Blackhawks, to me, got Fleury, almost for nothing, because the Golden Knights had to dump salary. They really didn't pay anywhere near a first-round pick to get him. But at the same time, they get themselves an asset who they feel is worth that. I think if Fleury does go, it wouldn't shock me if it ends up being something lesser than a first, maybe a second and a prospect or something to that nature. But Fleury's going to be another interesting one to watch tomorrow. Minnesota's the main team we've heard recently. We've heard other teams off and on here the last few weeks, but hard to say with any certainty what happens. Now, of course, staying with Chicago, we've talked recently as earlier this weekend about some major blockbuster deals coming out of Chicago after the Brandon Hagel trade. Mark Lazarus of The Athletic interviewed Jonathan Toews and really made it sound like he wasn't too thrilled with that and was really questioning his future in the Blackhawks organization. A lot of talk that he and Kane, DeBrincat even, could all be on the move along with Fleury, but not necessarily all before the trade deadline. But I know there was some talk that, maybe Patrick Kane could go. He has a full no move like Jonathan Toews, so he has full control here. But there was reports over some teams making inquiries, trying to see if they could get their hands on Kane, not only for a run this year, but next year as well. Now, Patrick Kane has reportedly told his team not interested in moving right now, but I think they'll likely reevaluate in the offseason. I think GM Kyle Davidson's going to have some long, hard chats with guys like Kane and Taves, and we could see more blockbusters in the offseason, and they do have some other players that we very well likely could see get traded before the deadline tomorrow, like Calvin DeHaan. Ryan Carpenter's another one. Maybe a Dylan Strome. I think that's less likely. I mean, right now we have Dylan Strome reunited with two former line mates and from his junior days that they absolutely had a tremendous chemistry with, and that's DeBrincat and Taylor Radish, who just came over from the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Hagel trade. So I don't know what they're going to do there. They may not make a move in that regard. I don't know, but Chicago should still be a team that is fairly busy. But obviously guys like Kane, good chance that doesn't happen now, but could happen in the summertime. Now, you got to wonder, too, there was a report from Dave Pagnotta of the fourthperiod.com indicating that he felt, based on what sources were telling him, that the New York Rangers would consider a trade of Alexis Lafreniere. Of course, that would only be if they're getting themselves like a real solid, superstar quality top six forward. So, clearly, the Rangers are one of the teams mentioned in the rumors around Kane. So if they don't do that now, or maybe if it does happen, if they want to entertain that in the offseason, it makes you wonder. Now, there's been other reports out there as well saying that the Rangers are not shopping Lafreniere, and I would believe that to be true. I don't think Chris Drury's out there passing around Lafreniere's name to other teams trying to see what kind of package he can get for him. I don't really think that's the case at all. But the Rangers are a team that's come a long way in their rebuild. They're likely going to the playoffs. They're going to be in a position to maybe do some damage in the playoffs. And clearly they are setting their sights on a Stanley Cup sometime in the next few years. And if it means trading Lafreniere or Capo Caco, who obviously two very high draft picks that they were fortunate to get through the draft lottery, but really, it's fair to say that as much as Lafreniere is improving, he's not having an immediate impact like some potential other, former first overall picks. Not to say that he won't get there, and I think they need to tread very carefully with trading him. I don't think they're shopping him, but I do think it's fair to say that if they had an opportunity at a blockbuster deal to add a star top-line player that would help get them to a Stanley Cup in the next year or two, I think they'd be willing to include him or Capo Caco. I think it's a real possibility. But are they shopping him? Absolutely not. I really don't think that's the case, and I don't think that's really what Pagnotta says. I've seen some people refuting the reports, saying that Pagnotta's reports were inaccurate. I don't think that's what he's saying. I just think he's saying that if a team wants to call the Rangers with a real solid offer to take a top six star forward that they might want to part with, then Lafreniere could be on the table, and that I would say likely is true. Now, another interesting situation to watch closely tomorrow is going to be the Predators and forward Filip Forsberg, who's having a career season. Now, he's a pending unrestricted free agent. We know David Poile doesn't really like to go into the playoffs without, a contract in place. He's made that clear. The Predators are a team that, to me, could be in the playoffs. It's not a guarantee. And to me, they're not contenders. So I would tread carefully if I'm David Poile. And if Forsberg's not signed, I really think they need to seriously consider trading him. I think based on what he's playing like right now, based on what the market's going to be for him, they're not going to have any choice but to give him a contract up around probably around a $9 million mark. I know they probably don't want to pay him more than Roman Josi because he's their captain and arguably their best player. He's having a career season during a contract year, which is quite common. We've seen it a lot, numerous times. Players do that. They get the big mega extension, and then it doesn't work out. The Predators already have deals on the books like that, and obviously some of those players, like a Matt Duchene, has bounced back. Things are looking better. Johansson's playing better too. But still, they have enough long-term deals with question marks on them that I don't know that David Poile wants to get himself into another one. I mean, Filip Forsberg's a good player. He's been there a long time. I don't know what direction his team's going to take, but I think it's going to be very interesting. Some reporters and insiders out there are saying that if he's not signed, they still think there's a decent chance he's not traded and that maybe they get the contract figured out before we officially hit free agency in the summertime. So we'll see, but that's going to be another big name that's scoring at a high rate to keep our eyes on as well. A couple defensemen that could move, but it might wait until the offseason is Jakob Chychrun, Ivan Provorov. Jakob Chychrun situation has been dragging on for a long time. I think a team like St. Louis, to me, screams to be the best fit. We've seen a lot of teams pick up rental D. That's not really Doug Armstrong's style. Usually with any kind of, bigger profile players, usually he wants players with term and rarely goes the rental route. So with the fact that Chychrun comes with term, it would be a good fit with their style. I think they make a lot of sense. But will they get a deal done before the deadline? It's really difficult to say. Things have drug on so long. It would not be shocking if it did carry over to the offseason, but only time will tell. But another really interesting player to watch for tomorrow. Ivan Provorov in Philly's been getting some attention. We're hearing teams like the Blues are in the mix there as well as the LA Kings. There could likely some other ones as well. Provorov's a good player, but certainly kind of lost his way the last few years. Probably about, I want to say, was it maybe 3 to 4 years ago, he was really looking to be a stud number one defenseman. And then he kind of plateaued and kind of dropped off his play. And he's looked lost the last couple of years. And I think a fresh start with some new coaches, a new scenery, some different, maybe systems to work with might benefit him to get back to his old ways. Ivan Provorov has a decent amount of term, over $6 million contract. It might not be the trickiest thing to do, but there is reportedly a lot of interest. So again, St. Louis, who likes players with term and has a history of making trades with the Flyers, I've been reported to be kicking around there. But again, no guarantees a deal gets done because that very well could happen in the offseason. Max Domi is another name as well. Been linked to the Rangers, Bruins, and a few other teams, even the Avalanche, I think, to some degree. Of course, his time in Columbus is expected to end. He is expected to be moved. He can play center. He can play wing. He can be a good bottom six, gritty player with a little bit of offensive upside. Domi is likely going to get picked up by one of the contenders. Hard to say exactly where he goes. Alexander Radulov has apparently been getting some interest from the Rangers too. I don't know. I'm not really sure where the fit is there myself. I was a little confused by those reports. I know the Rangers likely do want to add another forward, is what the rumor was, to kind of rebuild that bottom six a little bit and maybe have a versatile guy who can kind of go up and down, maybe second, third line kind of player, like a utility knife kind of player. I mean, I don't know. They picked up Frank Vetrano. That's working out so far, but it's early. The Rangers are reportedly looking at a lot of these guys. I'm not sure we're going to see the Rangers make a blockbuster trade. I know back a number of weeks ago, I would have said that it was looking good that Chris Drury was going to take a big swing here and go for something substantial. Now it looks like it's going to be more likely a little bit less high profile, a little bit more around the depth, and kind of go from there. But like I said, the teams I expect to be the most busy tomorrow making the biggest swings are the Avalanche and the Rangers to a degree. The Rangers might be one of the busier teams, but maybe not as substantial. And then you get the Blues. Like I said, I'm not sure what the Maple Leafs are done. Another situation there, as we reported on earlier, of course, with the Leafs having goaltending question marks. Peter Mrazek's on waivers. Is a team going to pick him up? And if not, if he clears, is that going to set the path here for a trade? Maybe a team's willing to pick him up if he's already cleared. That's a possibility. They signed Harry Sateri coming over from the KHL. The Finnish goaltender who just won a gold medal in the Olympics has played in the KHL the last number of years and has had some solid seasons. Played in the NHL before and didn't fare too well. So I don't know that he's any kind of goaltending savior by any means, but certainly he has to clear waivers where he's coming over from Europe. So the Leafs essentially have two goalies on waivers. And I'm really curious to see if anybody gets claimed and how that's going to affect their plans. Are they done here with what they've done today, getting Giordano and Blackwell? Are they going to address the goaltending situation any further? I know Pierre LeBrun on Insider Trading on TSN tonight said that Sateri, assuming he clears and gets on the Leafs roster, that he is expected to be given an opportunity to play NHL games, and that Peter Mrazek, if he clears and stays with the Leafs, will more likely be sent down to the minors. So they very well could run with Campbell and Sateri if it's working out, with the possibility of Mrazek coming back up for the playoffs, being like your number 3 or what have you. But again, I don't know. This seems to be a risky move to me. Wouldn't be shocking if the Leafs have something else in their back pocket, but only time will tell for tomorrow. They'll be interested to see if they're active or if they consider themselves somewhat finished as well. So that is pretty much the summary here of what we're going to see. There's still lots of other names I haven't even mentioned that we're likely going to be dealt tomorrow. I know like Phil Kessel comes to mind, in Arizona. There's a few Sens players that I know likely going to get traded if there's a deal for them, like a Chris Tierney, for example. Josh Brown on defense. There's a couple of names that could be on the move, and there's bound to be others as well. We haven't seen the Carolina Hurricanes do a whole lot yet. Be curious to see what they do to keep up with the arms race here in the Eastern Conference, considering a lot of their other rivals here, like the Panthers especially, the Lightning, and then Toronto today. So I'll be curious to see how all these teams fare. But that's where things sit. That's your trade deadline primer. I will be coming on tomorrow, obviously, with lots of videos for all the deals. Can't make a promise just yet, but we are considering maybe doing a live stream probably around mid to late morning tomorrow. That's a possibility, so stay tuned for that. It's not a for sure thing, but I am going to try, and then we're going to go from there. But there'll be lots of deals, so let me know your thoughts on everything that you think is going to happen tomorrow, what you saw today. Make sure you subscribe and stick around if you're new. This is the place to get all your latest updates for the NHL trade deadline 2022 and beyond. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.